So what happens if you settle your affidavit of support claim and then the defendant violates the agreement to pay support? Well, for starters, that happens very, very infrequently. I've been doing this for over 10 years, and I can count on one hand the number of times that a defendant has backed away from a settlement agreement. But it does happen, and I am working on one of those right now. If it happens that the defendant agrees to make payments under the affidavit of support and then violates that agreement, you can enforce the settlement agreement in federal court because settlement agreements are contracts. And when I have clients settle cases under the affidavit of support, there are always enforcement penalties in there. So if a defendant violates the agreement to pay support, usually they will be subject to a penalty provision, and they might also be subject to something called accelerated damages, which means everything that's owed under the settlement agreement has to be paid right away. And then on top of all of that, the affidavit of support requires attorney fees. So if you have to bring the defendant into court to enforce the affidavit of support, you get your attorney fees for that as well. I was talking to a judge yesterday in a settlement conference. We got that case settled, and the judge said, "Look, this judge had been on the bench for years, and he said I have never once had a party come to me needing to enforce a settlement agreement, and if that happened, I would throw the book at them because you have the parties sitting down in front of a federal judge promising to take care of a case by doing certain things. You can imagine that if you take that same claim back to that judge and say, Your Honor, we all sat in front of you here 6 months ago. The defendant promised to do things and he hasn't done them. That judge is not going to be very happy. So that is a flavor of why you don't end up having to enforce settlement agreements very often. But I'm sitting here working on a motion today because it does happen occasionally. And if and when that's required, I'm very careful to always have provisions in the settlement agreement to make it so that my client has the maximum safeguards possible if they have to go back to court. Hope that's helpful. I'm Greg McLaughlin, the affidavit of support lawyer. I work on these cases in federal district court. Happy to answer questions in the comments. Take care, everyone.